Yeah, let me get a cup of coffee. Let me get a cup of coffee. Did you catch it? Let me get a cup of coffee. Sometimes English is pronounced differently than it's written. By the end of this lesson, you're going to be able to understand and pronounce that phrase clearly. And knowing this is going to help both your listening skills and your English conversation skills. Let's study together. Hello and welcome to this American English pronunciation lesson. I'm Michael from Happy English, and I'm so glad that you've decided to join me today to learn English. Today, let's continue our discussion of natural American English pronunciation. In this lesson, we're going to talk about how we usually pronounce the preposition of. A cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee? A cup of coffee? A cup of coffee?
I know that prepositions can be tricky to use and also tricky to hear. Like other words in English, sometimes prepositions are not pronounced the way they're written. Of is a good example of this. Let's take a look at today's key phrase. Let me get a cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee, a cup of coffee!
A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee, a cup of coffee!
I didn't hear of in that phrase. That's because we usually pronounce of as a. The word of has two sounds. There's the vowel sound, like up or umbrella. And then there's the consonant sound, v, of, v, v. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Oh, Michael, that's not an F sound. That sounds like a V sound. And you're right. That's because the letter F is also pronounced like a V. Of. That's different than off. Of, off. Can you hear the difference? Of, the preposition of, has the V sound. And usually in everyday conversation, that V sound of is dropped. And that leaves us with the vowel sound. A bag of chips, a box of cookies, a glass of wine, a can of beer, a piece of cheese, a cup of coffee, a cup of coffee,
a cup of coffee, a cup of coffee!
a cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee?
The P sound at the end of cup and the sound of link together. A cup of coffee becomes a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee.
A cup of coffee? A cup of coffee, a cup of coffee!
A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. And you'll notice that that phrase is pronounced in one breath without any stopping between the words. A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. You'll also notice where the stress is in that phrase. Cup, coffee. A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. The article and the sound of are both unstressed. This is very typical in spoken English, especially spoken American English. In a sentence, some words get stressed, some words don't. And usually articles like and the and prepositions like of are not stressed in a sentence or a phrase. That's why a cup of coffee is pronounced as a cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. Let me get a cup of coffee. Let me get a cup of coffee. Get a. We've already mentioned that when there's a T at the end of a word, it's often reduced to a very soft D sound. Get a becomes getta, getta, getta. Get a cup of coffee, get a cup of coffee. Get a cup of coffee, get a cup of coffee. In this part of the phrase, get a cup of coffee, you can hear where the stress is on those three words. Get a cup of coffee, get a cup of coffee. Let me is usually pronounced as lemmy, lemmy, lemmy. Let me get a cup of coffee. Let me get a cup of coffee. Okay, let's practice. I'll speak the green text like this. A cup of coffee. You should speak when you see the gray text like this. Get ready. A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. A cup of coffee. Get ready. Get a cup of coffee. 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 Get ready. Let me get a cup of coffee. 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 Keep in mind that pronunciation is half doing and half listening, so be sure to watch this video a couple of times to get these sounds of English in your ears. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Remember to leave your comment below, and I'll catch you next time right here at Happy English. Catch you later.